Hi, I'm Josh Brown, Executive Director of the Puget Sound Regional Council. PSRC is a regional planning agency that brings together local governments from King, Pierce, Snohomish, and Kitsap counties to solve big problems. And of course, one of the big challenges facing our entire region today is the cost of housing, particularly affordable housing for individuals and families at all income levels. That's why we developed the Build Here housing tool. So we're here today to help get the word out, and to assist me, let me welcome my colleagues, Robin and Andres.
Hi, Josh.
Thanks for being here.
Hey, Josh. Hey, everybody. My name is Andres Mantilla. I'm a partner at Uncommon Bridges. We are a nationally recognized outreach and engagement consulting firm based here in Seattle. We've had the opportunity to work with PSRC over the years on several outreach and engagement initiatives, and today we are thrilled to launch the Build Here Puget Sound tool. And later this fall, we'll be in your community for a community roadshow, so stay tuned for those details.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robin Koski, the Director of Government Relations and Communications at Puget Sound Regional Council. This housing tool has been a partnership with Amazon from the very beginning. So I'm here today to introduce Kellyanne Kirkpatrick, the Senior Product Manager of the Housing Fund at Amazon. Thanks so much for being with us today, Kellyanne.
Hi, this is Kellyanne Kirkpatrick, Head of Grants and Partnerships for the Amazon Housing Fund. We are so excited to be demoing a tool in partnership with PSRC and HRNA advisors, a tool that helps bring together information from so many different places, all in one single useful location. We're excited that the public, our elected officials, our nonprofit partners, developers of all kinds will have information to make better housing decisions. This is not something that happened overnight, so thank you so much to the team that helped pull this together.
A big thanks to Kellyanne and Amazon. And to kick off our discussion today, let me hand things over to the Housing Consortium of Everett and Snohomish County, who have been doing incredible work to advance housing affordability in Snohomish County.
Hi, I'm Bobby Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of the Housing Consortium of Everett and Snohomish County. Our members face a number of challenges in getting homes built at Fort Dawkins in Snohomish County. Number one is scarcity of opportunity, knowing where those opportunities exist. Second thing I would say, like in alignment with that, is the cost of land. It's very hard to develop in the Puget Sound right now. So trying to find that needle in a haystack of land opportunities makes the work harder for staffs that are small on the development side of things. And I'd say third, once you find that needle in a haystack, does it meet the guidelines that a local municipality has for planning purposes and zoning and environmental challenges that a site may or may not have. So these are all things that developers have to go through and experience. I think the map would be a wonderful tool for our development community. It provides our development community the ability to identify opportunities in a much more expeditious fashion and be able to put those opportunities against one another to see what fits what they're trying to develop more succinctly than just going out and driving around and finding stuff. Aligned with that is the piece that with an assessed value piece of the parcel, you can know what the price is for the project and start doing back of the napkin development projections that can really move the process along faster towards a purchase and sale agreement. I'd say thirdly, the ability for you to work with a municipality on potential zoning challenges that exist and any environmental challenges that can exist with GIS information that are laid into the map can really make the work of a project much easier for an affordable developer. I think having a tool that we are all working off of in a common way allows us to provide advocacy with local politicians, statewide politicians on opportunities that exist in underserved areas. And allows us to advocate for opportunities in that way. I think that also the piece that's big is being able to quantify what those opportunities are so that we are doing advocacy-based work at a local or state level with reports and trying to solve something. We can have something anecdotally that we're all basing that same information on. And so it just gives a common message to what we're trying to mitigate and solve. I think what excites me about how we can use this tool locally is our ability to use it in public advocacy settings, whether those are community meetings, engagement with council members locally, other politicians, really being able to use a tool in real time that gets out in front of some of the stuff that we are trying to always mitigate and get in front of with NIMBYism, I think would really help us advance affordable housing causes in regards to really meeting community need.
Thanks, Bobby. For local governments to address affordable housing, they need resources at their fingertips. The Build Here Puget Sound Housing Tool will help local governments overcome technical and policy barriers to bring more affordable housing online. Here's Andres and Robin having a conversation with Bainbridge City Council member Ashley Matthews to tell us more.
Welcome, Councilmember Matthews. Thanks for joining us. I know that your community is doing a lot of great things around affordable housing. What are some of the bigger policy roadblocks that you're facing as you're doing your work?
Thanks for having me, Andres. It's great to be here. I think some of the biggest policy roadblocks we face deal with communication and visualization and really trying to tackle and talk about what can be an abstract and complex issue that's really hard to get a grasp on and visualize and have those conversations. I think also many jurisdictions and communities are wrestling with the whole issue of our local control versus state mandates, and we understand why a lot of those things came to be because a lot of communities weren't doing their part. We are in a housing crisis, and so I think there are things that have to be done statewide to get us there, but a lot of the difficult policy conversations came around what's best for local communities as opposed to maybe what is something mandated by the state that might not be a perfect fit. And that is, I think, the goal to get our communities to that period of support much faster. We spend so much time, I think this is all of us, we would relate, we spend so much time explaining the why and oftentimes even fighting appeals and legal money and time and staff time on just trying to get the community to come along when something as non-political and there's data doesn't have a horse in the race. Data is just there to inform us. And I think the more of that we can rely on, the better it will be for all of us.
How do you continue to build that community trust in your community?
For us, it's taken a really long time. That's why I think we're the last in the state to get their comp plan turned in, just because that is the piece that's the hardest for us. We definitely have a really, really engaged community, I would call them, passionate about these things, and also a community that uses or values our groundwater and values the fact that we are an island with finite resources, but then also uses that sometimes as a way to thwart or stop the affordable housing conversation. So we do get a lot of not here because of water, not here because we're a single source aquifer. And we are, and all of those things need to be taken into consideration, but we also we have the responsibility to house neighbors and provide affordable housing for our police and our firefighters and our teachers, for our folks who want to move back after college and raise their family. So there's the responsibility that we have to sort of weigh with the difficulties that come up.
Absolutely. As you are having those conversations, as you look at the whole process of land use, housing, siting, what do you wish was easier for jurisdictions to have at their fingertips or understand in their so that you could have a better decision-making process?
Mm-hmm. Data. I think data. So a lot of the questions we get are around things that I think having more information and more tangible and data that you can actually see and it makes sense, really, I think data is key.
Elected officials frequently tell us they want to support housing policy, but they need solid data that can withstand pushback at a city council meeting. How does a tool like the one we're talking about today empower local leadership to make bolder changes?
Yeah, it's having the data there. A lot of times we're not able to answer the questions because we don't have the data. And I think this would be something that would allow us just to be able to say, look, you can refer here. Here's what you're looking for. Here's what's going on in this jurisdiction. Here's what's going on Bainbridge. Here's how you can reconcile the two. Here's, it might not be data that is helpful to us in some form. And so I think that's really good. I think it's good so that folks see a transparent, hopefully impartial tool that's just the data. There's no politics in it. It's not the data trying to be pro-housing or be pro-growth or being anti-growth or any of the terms that people use. It's just the data. So I think in things like, sometimes it's really easy to get bogged down in the politics in politics. And the more science and the more data and the more facts that we can phase into the conversation, I think the more successful we'll all be.
Thanks, Andres, Robin, and Councilmember Matthews for an incredible conversation. So far we've been talking about the challenges, the roadblocks to building affordable housing, but we want to shift gears and talk about solutions and resources. And that's what the Build Here housing tool is all about, providing resources to everybody who cares about affordable housing to be able to make a bigger difference in all of our communities. Let's head down to Pierce County, and we're going to have a spotlight with the South Sound Housing Affordability Partners, learning more about their work and featuring a tool demonstration.
I'm Jason Gothier. I manage the South Sound Housing Affordability Partners. Our small governments here in Pierce County have a great staff that are working very hard to see housing built in their communities, but they're a small team. Having a tool that's easily at their disposal, that's right at their fingertips to help them make decisions and see future growth in their communities, it's going to be incredibly important and impactful for those small teams. Developers of all sizes, nonprofits, for-profits, are all going to be excited about a tool like this. It'll help them quickly assess a property, understand some potential development challenges and what's allowed there, and then make their decisions. That hopefully can cut down on their pre-development pieces of work that they need to do and reduce the time and the amount the project takes to put together. Good policy starts with good data. And this tool can help provide a common set of facts for developers and for local government to work together to achieve our goal of building housing across our communities. We're really excited about this tool being able to help us further identify publicly owned sites that we can put into action and see affordable housing developed on. We've had a great deal of success in recent years here in Pierce County, seeing publicly owned sites become utilized for affordable housing development. We really are looking forward to this tool helping to further that work.
Across the central Puget Sound region, communities are growing rapidly. Local governments and organizations are working tirelessly to meet housing demands, but small teams frequently face a major bottleneck: limited staffing to parse through mountains of complex market data. To solve this, the Build Here Puget Sound housing tool puts critical housing metrics right at your fingertips. We start with the snapshot view. Designed for a quick, intuitive read, this dashboard highlights your community's core housing market conditions, giving lean teams immediate access to data that used to take weeks to compile. But data doesn't live in a vacuum. Using the comparison feature, you can instantly benchmark your community against its neighbors or the entire region. This context is essential for understanding regional migration, shared housing markets, and collaborative supply solutions. The map view takes you inside your community at the neighborhood level. By visualizing spatial data directly, planners and advocates can pinpoint exactly where renter cost burdens are heaviest and where gaps in affordable housing options are growing the widest. Identifying these trends is the first step. The next step is translating this neighborhood level knowledge into targeted local action. For small municipal staffs, this tool acts as a force multiplier. Instead of manually auditing parcels, users can instantly assess whether a specific property's current zoning matches the housing priorities of the community. This capability is invaluable to the housing development community. Developers of all sizes, both nonprofits and for-profits, can instantly view unit density projections and flag potential site constraints early. This cuts down significantly on expensive pre-development work and reduces overall project timelines. For housing advocates and community planners, the tool unlocks a critical strategy: identifying underutilized, publicly owned land for future affordable housing development. Build Here makes it easy to spot these opportunities, turning vacant public parcels into vibrant, affordable homes. Good policy starts with good data. By establishing a common set of facts, Build Here bridges the gap between developers and local governments to build the housing our region needs. Visit the platform today to see where new housing fits best in your community.
Now we're going to hear from a special guest who's exceptional at navigating the complexity of building affordable housing in the region. Joining Robin and Andres in the studio is Yi Zhao from Imagine Housing.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. As an affordable housing developer, your team spends an immense amount of time, I would imagine, on pre-development and site acquisition. Traditional site screening can take weeks of manual research, phone calls, digging through mismatched maybe city archives. How can a tool like Build Here help streamline that process for you?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's important to think about when it comes to affordable housing, a lot of our developments are based upon partnerships, right? Land is really hard for us to secure. We're in the marketplace competing against for-profit developers. We don't necessarily have the same amount of resources that they might be able to gather. So as we're looking at site selection and potential for development, it's really important for us to be able to know where we can build relationships, where we can find mission-aligned owners so that we know where to put our energy. Because in a competitive bid process, we just don't have the same dollars. So being able to have very clear data about ownership and where does it make sense, so we know where to put our time. So a tool like this helps us really focus our energy into what's the most appropriate parcels that work for us.
Mm-hmm. And can you just speak a little bit more around understanding kind of the broader infrastructure needs around sites and how a tool like this can help you kind of bring all these different search engines together?
Yeah, I mean, we think about who we serve, right? So for us at Imagine Housing, our focus is on working families. So we think about, where's the closest transit? Where's childcare? Where are schools? What school district are we potentially putting families into? So being able to have a tool that can kind of help us consolidate all that really makes it easier for us, once again, where to focus energy, where to focus our limited resources to be able to find the best site that best serves the demographic that we are trying to help.
Smaller nonprofit housing developers don't have the same type of research budgets or GIS departments that large commercial firms do. How does this tool close that equity gap and democratize data for organizations with limited staff?
Yeah, so this is one of the things that when it comes to real estate development, it is just math. And it is solely based upon data of looking at parcel sizing, zoning, markets that are supportable, and having a tool where we're not putting out a ton of money into trying to get all that. Your commercial developers are going to spend millions, literally upon millions of dollars to be able to have that kind of information. So to be able to help bring in more smaller developers, more community-oriented affordable housing developers, that just really brings it open and opens it up for the community to be able to have someone that serves them specifically.
You mentioned the need of working through community partnerships and community-based nonprofits. Part of that, I would imagine, is building trust and relationship. How does data from one source play into building that trust amongst partners?
Yeah, I mean, for us, what we look at, we work with more than just other nonprofit partners. We work with the faith community, and we use kind of these data points of how much housing is around this site to help really illustrate the need that a community might have. This is one of the things I hear a lot about of people want affordable housing. People want, have this vision of wanting a more interconnected community. But sometimes I think what people envision versus what is reality sometimes don't always line up. So being able to bring together kind of yes, you want housing for your grocery clerks or the barista that serves you, But if the closest affordable housing or the closest site where someone could live is 10 miles that way, that doesn't quite help. And being able to bring that to a community meeting or being able to like kind of tell that story helps people really visualize it, helping people really understand the need that's within their kind of neighborhood.
And you at Imagine Housing kind of demoed this tool at a smaller scale for just some east side geography. Now this tool is going to be expanded to cover the whole 4-county area. Can you talk about if you can see any ways that this could also be used in advocacy with either local government or state government or regional government to help move the affordable conversation along?
Yeah. The tool that we had kind of used was really around faith-owned land and some of the opportunities that faith-owned land has here in East King County. Thinking about how we use that in terms of looking at what was the potential yield of here is thousands of potential affordable housing units that's locked behind land use code. So we have kind of taken that to the different kind of cities. We've been working with planning commissions about how to unlock more units. And I can see this tool being very similar into here where some underutilized parcels, here where some of the really small tweaks in zoning code could unlock thousands of units and kind of really help our region.
Just to follow up on that, I wonder if you have, you guys are doing a lot of projects all over the place. Do you have an example of a project that maybe could have benefited from a tool like this and maybe had the process go a little bit smoother, maybe better communications and conversations with community partners?
I can talk about a project that didn't happen because we didn't have the right information. We have kind of worked with the faith community for a long time. So this is before we kind of had our own data points of where land makes sense. We've had people approach us about, oh, we have this great parcel that you guys could really use. And then as we kind of dig deeper into it, it's it's not quite the right size, or you're in this really weird like octagon shape that we can't fully like build efficiently on. So being able to kind of not spend the like 6 months we did with one group to be like, wait, this doesn't work for us. Something like that would have been really helpful in the amount of like resources that we had put towards that originally.
So thank you so much for joining us. Any final thoughts as we close out here today?
Yeah, I think for me, this is an amazing tool because when we talk about affordable housing, we're not all the same when it comes to development. Every organization, every community has different needs and different products. So while you might need some bigger multifamily, this also helps with home ownerships, duplexes, triplexes. There's a wide range of potential development that this could unlock. So it's great to be able to see kind of those more, not what people might necessarily envision, but just opening up more housing for everyone.
Thanks, E. We've heard from residents across the region that housing affordability is a challenge, but we know on the ground actually building the housing can be even more difficult. Data and great analysis can be part of the solution. So to learn more, let's head over to Kitsap County and hear from the Bremerton Housing Authority.
Hi, my name is Tim Shaney, and I'm the Director of Business Solutions and Information Technology at Bremerton Housing Authority here in Kitsap County.
And I'm Tori Quinn. I'm the Director of Development and Acquisitions here at Bremerton Housing Authority. I don't think the importance of that can be overestimated in all sorts of different applications. We would use information like this when talking to community members, elected officials, potential lenders and investors, and even more importantly, when we write up grant applications, because most affordable housing projects do need some level of grant funding. And I would say too that this tool for me, not a tech-savvy person, was intuitive, and I could dive in and easily navigate. So I see this being hugely helpful for us going forward with our work.
From my perspective, all the projects that we do always include our partners. We're not doing anything in isolation. So to have a shared sense of the current state based in objective data is really valuable. And I would say our decision makers, so that in our case would be our board of commissioners, they also want to see, what were the underlying assumptions that led to our decisions. So this is a really helpful tool.
I really think it would be a lot easier to get people on the same page if we're all looking at the same data and talking about that data. And by, stakeholders, I mean members of the community, elected officials. We recently spoke to one of Senator Murray's staffers who had a lot of questions about the demand for affordable housing in this area. And this tool will help us better answer those questions from outside stakeholders.
And our communications team wants to tell a story using data, but in a very compelling way that's approachable and makes sense to the audiences that we're going to be working with. And so this Build Here tool has delivered on that. So its graphics are well done. They're very clear. They're very easy to understand. We can filter them. We can export the data and use the data in different ways. So it's a flexible tool that is very visually appealing. Another application for the Build Here tool that we're really excited about is to help us with our strategic planning. So our agency right now is entering into its strategic planning work, and we need this tool.
Yeah, and as the director of development, I plan on using this as a tool to help focus our efforts. We recently acquired 2 new building parcels, and frankly, when the executive director and I were talking about the possibilities, we kind of moved from one, maybe if we talk to somebody who's an advocate for more senior housing, then we want to do senior housing. If we talk to someone who has another idea for what we should do there, it's been hard to focus our plan and approach our planning in a more disciplined way. I think this tool will really help us focus on not just anecdotal information that we get from our community partners. I don't mean to dismiss the importance of that. We need some data to back those decisions, and I think this tool will help us do that as we move forward.
Thanks, Tim and Tori. Now, let's talk about ways that state and local leaders can work together to address housing affordability. Here's Andres and Robin with Representative Janice Zahn.
Representative Zahn, thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you here today. I know that the state has, over the last couple sessions, focused on different middle housing legislation and different types of housing type policy. How does having a shared regional tool like this one change the game for jurisdictions trying to figure out where diversifying housing types, such as the missing middle or others, makes the most sense to be built in an infrastructure and policy standpoint?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Housing is my gig. I think it's such an important piece because everyone needs housing. And when I think about this tool, I believe it's really very, very transformative because so much of the time we can be guessing about what the data really is and what's going on in our communities. So the more that we have tools that becomes a way for us to have that shared knowledge and experience, it helps to build trust for our community, and it gives some common, definition and data and information in a way that helps us to move a lot quicker. Because I feel like one of the biggest challenges we have is that we know in Washington State we're short 1 million housing units until 2044, and so the way that we've been building is just not going to get us to where we need to be.
Housing and density can obviously be a pretty hot button issue that can become very emotional very quickly. How does introducing a single trusted regional data platform help shift public discourse from fear-based speculation to fact-based problem solving?
Well, I think it's a huge part of that because when we are able to use facts and data, we can help lower the temperature. Because when we talk about housing, a lot of times where we end up creating a lot of friction is communities many of them are very happy with the way the communities are, the housing that's already there. So it can be a little bit uncertain about what we're actually talking about. So if we can lower the temperature by respectfully sharing information around the facts and data, we lower the temperature about what people might believe is going on with actually data on what's actually going on. You know, the other question you had asked me earlier, I was also thinking about the fact that this is a whole ecosystem where all these different pieces are interrelated, and the data can help us to be that glue and the tie to bring these different things together as well.
How does, just as a follow-up, how does that data build community trust? You're talking about kind of more information education. Do you think it can build community trust as well?
I do, because if I think about data in a really regional way, which is what this tool does, it starts to give us an opportunity to talk about the similarities and the differences as well, right? Because I also have a belief that if you've seen one city, you've seen one city, right? Everybody has their own ecosystem within the cities. So the more that we're able to have data to be able to talk about what are some comparables between cities to help understand if there's a tool that's used in one place, how might that apply or not apply? It helps us to build that context for data and create the information that really is important, because without it, what we find a lot of times is, you know, for example, in my district in the 41st, you know, I have the largest city outside of Seattle in King County, right? We're the 5th largest city in the state with Bellevue, 155,000 people. That is a different city than the one adjacent to it, whether it is Newcastle, Sammamish, or Mercer Island. So the more that we're able to have that broader lens of data and information, I think it does help build trust.
As we do this work with housing advocacy groups, developers, and planners, it's true that they don't always speak the same language or use the same definitions. How does a tool like Build Here act as a collaborative bridge almost for all three groups in doing this work?
Well, a single source of truth is always really important because it can lower misunderstandings about what people mean. If we're talking about area median income and the different income levels, what that looks like, the definition of the different housing types, and getting really clear about what we're talking about so that we can hopefully avoid misunderstandings, because I think a lot of times, whether it's permitting or land use or financing or any number of other pieces associated with housing, it can be the places where we might end up arguing, even though when we get all the way through the definitions and understanding, we're actually talking about the same thing. So the data can be that place of neutrality around we're just looking at numbers. We can hopefully remove some of the other noises that can be associated with it and be able to look at data and information. Now, with that said, I will say that data is only as good as having that context. So having a tool that then helps us with those nuances is really important. Lastly, I would say my hope is that as we use the tool, if there are additional definitions or stickiness that we need to make some modifications to so that we can get better alignment amongst all the parties, that we're able to do that as well, right? Because data without context and that knowledge is still just data and numbers.
So you have a unique perspective because you used to be a local elected official, so you understand what's going on the ground very well, and now you're a state legislator. How do you see a data tool like this moving the conversation at the state level forward as we try to make policies that respect local communities, but also move us along to get to that million number that you were talking about?
Yeah, I would say that when I think about then the example I gave with just my district, the 41st, and the differences in the sizes of cities. Now when we take a broader lens out and look at statewide, that's even more of lots of different information, the difference between urban and rural areas. And also when I think about the ecosystem, which is that housing is tied to transportation, jobs, school enrollment, where we actually make investments in infrastructure. So the more that that data is available, I think the more that it helps us to, again, lower the temperature, make it about really understanding the data for where do we put our investments. We also know that the Housing Trust Fund still does not have sufficient dollars to fund all of the needs we have to make the housing more affordable. So where should those investments go? How do we think hard about making sure that as we are growing our economy in Washington State and trying to create jobs, how do we make sure that we have sufficient housing? And then how do we think about schools and school enrollment and school investments and human services? So I think that it is actually the nucleus of all these other pieces that are built onto each other. And we know that at the state level, we don't have enough funds. I think it's no secret that we have had budget challenges. So we need to be really thoughtful about prioritizing where the investments are, how much more investment we might need. And being grounded in data is always better than trying to guesstimate, because inevitably when we make guesses, then lots of people become unhappy because it's not grounded in something that we can measure and see how we're doing in terms of outcomes.
Thank you so much, Representative Zahn. As we kind of close out this section, just any final words or takeaway that you have as you look at this tool launched today?
I'm just really excited to see the tool, fiddle with the tool, and then see what additional things we might be able to do to help us leverage that tool for even more related to housing. We know that we can't wait anymore. Housing has been a challenge now for quite some time. We talk about this is the year of housing, this is the decade of housing, and I believe that we're going to continue to talk about housing as a human right and how we actually activate even more of that housing and having a data tool to help us get there. I'm just really grateful that we have this tool that's launching today.
I know back when the legislature was trying to enact the missing middle housing bill, PSRC did some work to try to help visualize what was happening on the ground and what the law would have meant on the ground in communities around the state. And the bill didn't pass the first year. It took 2 years to get it through. How do you see a tool like this helping those policy bills that make changes across jurisdictions? How do you see a tool like that informing work at the state level?
I really see this tool as so multifaceted. And I will give you maybe a comparison to a different tool that I've seen at the state level, and that is the Public Works Board has their dashboard. And they talk about how different grants are displayed in a dashboard and synced in a way that if you focus in on a geography and a region, you can see where the different investments are in multiple areas. And I feel like this data tool that we're talking about does the same thing around housing in a way that helps us to think about when we talk about housing, we also need to make sure that we have the infrastructure to fuel the housing. And earlier we had chatted about making sure that we think about school enrollment. And as we have more housing types, what are the other needs around that housing that we might not have thought of? We've talked a lot at the state level about childcare. So as we think about more and more families being able to live in areas that maybe they've been shut out of because housing is so expensive that after they have families, they end up moving somewhere else, right? When we look at those kinds of tools and say, now we can actually build more, 2 and 3 bedroom housing units, what does that actually activate and unlock with more families being able to be there? It helps school enrollment. It then leads to us thinking about the fact that we need more childcare in that proximity. So I really think it is this activator that unlocks these other conversations that we need to be having and how we right size where those investments need to go and prioritize.
Thanks for joining us, Representative Zahn. Robin, Andres, thanks for joining us, and everybody who's shared just amazing conversations about this work. So let me hand things over to Andres to talk about our engagement plan.
Thanks, Josh. Later this fall, we're taking this show on the road, working with our housing partners across all 4 counties to demo this tool. So look for those dates later this fall.
Big thank you to Amazon and HRNA who developed the tool, the Uncommon Bridges team, PSRC staff, and the entire Build Here Puget Sound team.
We're thrilled to be able to make this tool available to the region and to advance all of our housing efforts collectively. Great data makes great decisions, so build here Puget Sound.